similar to something that you see in a dream. It doesn't necessarily have to have a meaning. Maybe it's just there because the strangeness is beautiful, and seeing it makes you see something new. It makes you feel something new. And for a little bit, it's like you're just viewing the world through new eyes. So, I'm going to read the little bio at the bottom of the page. The great surrealist master, René-François Ghislain Magritte, studied at the Académie Royale des Beaux-Arts in Brussels and became a commercial artist for fashion magazines and a designer of wallpaper. His paintings were initially influenced by Futurism and Cubism, but later he was attracted to the work of Giorgio de Chirico. In 1924, he became a founder member of the Belgian Surrealist group, which provided an escape from the dull routine of his everyday work. From 1927 to 1930, he lived in Paris to better continue his study of the Surrealists, then returned to Brussels, where he built his reputation for paintings of dreamlike incongruity, in which themes and objects are jumbled in bizarre, nonsensical situations, often showing paintings within paintings. He is regarded in the United States as a forerunner of pop art. So, another one of my favorite painters is Marc Chagall, whom I've liked since I was about 11 or 12. And one thing I really enjoy about Chagall's work is just the whimsy and the lightheartedness of it. I like how in his paintings there's always these little surprises hidden in them, kind of painted small or in the background, so you might not notice it at first, but if you look at it a second time, it's just kind of waiting for you there, and it'll kind of just surprise you. So I think in this painting, you see all these like cute little details, like in the background, there's a man and a bird. There's another person who looks like they're holding a book. There's a person blowing a trumpet in the background who could be an angel. There's an angel right there. And you can kind of see these like houses and rooftops here in the background with like people walking in the streets. And I'm going to read the bio. Born into an Orthodox Jewish family in what was then Russian Poland, Marc Chagall studied in St. Petersburg and Paris and returned to his native city on the eve of World War I. Initially, he worked as a sign writer, but on his return to Russia, he joined the Knave of Diamond group and participated in the 1917 exhibition, which was intended as an attack on the stuffy classicism of the Moscow School of Art. The revolution broke out shortly afterwards, and Chagall was appointed director of the Vitebsk Art School before being summoned to Moscow to design sets for the Jewish theater. He left Russia in 1922 and settled near Paris. On the outbreak of World War 1942, he moved to the USA, where he designed sets and costumes for the ballet, as well as illustrating books and producing stained glass windows. Notably for the UN building in New York and the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. He also painted the murals for the Knesset, Israeli parliament. His paintings combine fantasy, folklore, and biblical themes with an intensely surreal quality. Indeed, it is claimed that Guillaume Apollinaire originally coined the term surrealist to describe Chagall's paintings. So, my second favorite painter is Edward Hopper, who was an American 20th century realist painter. And normally, I'm not like a huge fan of realism, but there are two things about Hopper's work that really strike me and really stand out to me. The first being his use of chiaroscuro, which is a word that means the contrast of light and shadow, which I think you can definitely see here in this painting. How there's this really brightly lit section over to the right, and how you really captured the light kind of coming in at the specific slant. So you're kind of able to tell the time of day, probably late afternoon, I'm guessing, from like the angle of the light and this like really rich, warm, golden color. I also really love the colors in this painting, how there's like the yellows and the reds, but then there's also these more cool and muted greens and blues and browns. The second thing I really like about Hopper's work is that there's always this sort of concealed sense of loneliness and isolation lurking beneath the surface. A lot of his paintings will have people alone in them, or even if they are accompanied by other people, you kind of get the sense that there's a little bit of like disconnection and isolation between them. So I think especially if you focus on the expression of the woman in this painting, I think you can interpret it different ways, but to me she kind of looks a little bit vacant, a little bit absent, maybe bored, or maybe just somewhere else in her head. And I'm going to read the bio at the bottom of the page. Edward Hopper studied in New York City under Robert Henry between 1900 and 1906, and then traveled in Europe over the ensuing 4 years. The artistic atmosphere in Paris, 1909 to 10, had a major impact on him and his paintings up to the mid-1920s, which reflect the influence of the French Impressionists. In this period, he worked mainly as an illustrator, but from 1924, he concentrated on large-scale works which drew upon contemporary American life for their inspiration, from diners and gas stations to hotel lobbies and late-night bars. The emphasis on scenes which were instantly recognizable, coupled with the strong interplay of light and shadow, left an indelible impression, so much so that Hopper's art has come to represent urban America of the interwar years and had a major influence on the pop art of more recent years. Another painter I really enjoy is J.M.W. Turner, who was a British romantic, and what I scenes and ocean scenes. The Romantics were all about celebrating the beauty and the sublimity of nature, and I think his paintings especially really make you feel that. I love the way he renders the sunset in this painting, the colors, and the clouds, and the brush strokes, I think, are really evocative. I love his rendering of the two ships in the painting. There's one in the front, which is more clearly defined, and the one behind it, which is the way that it's painted. It's kind of almost shrouded in mist. It almost looks like a ghost ship, and I love how you're able to see the reflection of both of them on the water. This painting as a whole, I just think is really gorgeous, and one time I was looking at it, and it literally made me cry. So that's the power of art, y'all. So the bio reads, Joseph Mallard William Turner entered the Royal Academy School in 1789 and began exhibiting the following year. He traveled all over England, filling sketchbooks with drawings of scenery and landmarks, which would later provide the raw material for his oils and watercolors. He collaborated with Girton on a 3-year watercolor project, but later turned to oils. After his first trip to Italy, 1819, his paintings showed